I mean, there's about 35 guys that are in right now, and couldn't be more excited to have that group that came out here in June. We are sprinkling in our freshmen right now with a few other late arrival guys for some medical issues. And then we will get the majority of our team in July. Now, of course, now it's not an ideal summer, but it's a summer. We're going to get our guys, in the best shape that they can get in with the amount of time that we have to be ready for to be ready for camp. Once we get to camp, Coach and I are going to have to sit and evaluate to see if guys might need a little bit more when it comes to it. This is definitely a new approach for us all. So we're going to have to keep our minds open and be able to evaluate and adjust and do what we need to do to have a successful camp. So we're going to give all our guys are going to at least have a great base and a great foundation going into camp. The thing that I obviously miss, is just the amount of workout time that we lost throughout a few months. Selfishly as a strength coach, I know as a country, we all have to, do what we need to get done. But, missing that amount of time for us, I think it's our greatest advantage, is the weight room and our preparation. And right now, we've just adjusted our plan to make sure that we're going to get our guys out there, in the best shape that we can get them in the short amount of time to be able to perform at a high level and, most importantly, to stay injury-free. We've made a lot of adjustments, when it comes to how we work a normal work day. We've had a tremendous amount of help to be able to do so, following the state's guidelines when it comes down to a maximum of 10 people, in our rooms. That's one strength coach and 9 athletes. And that's actually pretty close to the ratio that we'll work in a regular day. But on this format, when these guidelines, that's how we had to operate, starting at 7 in the morning. Another group at 8:30, another group at 11, and then another group at 1 o'clock. So we've spread that out throughout the day, and we've been able to use 2 facilities with a tremendous amount of help from people, especially with Coach Zielinski, Coach Z over on the Olympic side, who opened his doors out there in our old weight room for us to be able to run 2 groups at a time. So other than that, we probably would have had to have started at 7 in the morning. When we were looking at original numbers, it could have taken us into 11 o'clock at night if we would have stayed with our original numbers that were coming in and staying in one room. So fortunately, everybody's been on board when it comes to whatever needs to be done to get football up and rolling for this summer. And it's just been, a tremendous amount of help from the facilities people like Miss Sherry and Lenny and John, the maintenance. Our field crew has done an amazing job getting our grass ready on short notice, because the guys that work out in Feist will run in the stadium, while the guys that work out in Smith go run out in the grass. So people really jumped to it to get us up and rolling. And, it was amazing to see how these times has brought us closer together as a staff, and how that everybody's on the same board as an Illini family. And that's something that comes, from Josh when it comes to our weekly meetings and keeping us updated and keeping the cohesiveness, even though we're all in separate places in different parts, of the town or the city or the country or the state. And to be able to keep us all, on the same page comes from just great leadership from Josh. So it has been an amazing challenge. It's been a new challenge, and everybody's been up to it. And it's been really successful, at this point.
For the layman person that really doesn't understand what could go on during a summer off-season plan, whether, you were dealing with COVID or not, can you kind of give the lay person an idea of, what you're trying to get accomplished on a daily basis, whether it's out on the field running or in the weight room trying to get something accomplished? Is for the guy that's never been through that, or the guy that's never seen that, can you kind of give a summary?
Sure, absolutely. The biggest thing in what my philosophy is that we're big believers in the basics. And in fact, my my goal, my philosophy is just to be brilliant at the basics. And that's what we believe in a lot of. So what we'll do in June with our guys, if this was a traditional summer, is June for us has a lot to do with work capacity. And we're starting to get our guys in just in the best physical shape that they can be in from a general fitness standpoint. So that's basically what we'll concentrate on in the month of June. Our longer runs will be up to about 300 yards, and the amount of times that we have to do them in and the rest intervals in them, everything having to do with getting our bodies prepared, our legs over for turnover, our bodies ready for endurance strength. So the June is primarily the time when we're working on work capacity, which is our goal to be able to sustain 4 quarters of football. Once we move into July, and we started to build our weight room foundation as well in June. In July, the weight emphasis changes now to maximum loads. We want that emphasis for our guys to get back their winter strength gains and then some. And when it comes to July, we're looking for maximum loads and maximum effort in the month of July. Our run volume will change significantly in July, where we really bring the volume down, but we really kick up that intensity. So we're trying to match Rod Smith's goal of running a play every 15 seconds. I've got to be able to start to tailor some of these workouts to meet that type of expectations. And to be honest, the offensive part of it is easy. It's the defensive guys that really struggle. In this type of an offense, you can be 3 and out in 20, in about 30 seconds. So just enough time to take your helmet off, sit down, and then stand right back up and go back out there ready to go. So, we're starting to work a lot more on the performance aspect. Our guys' sprinting ability, their fast twitch, their change of direction, their specificity of what they do on the field when it comes to linemen and their yardage and sprinters and their yardage and how do they get there faster, obviously. And so July turns more into a performance month for us, obviously building into the expectations of August when it comes to camp. And that's how we go pretty much about setting that up, where June is our work capacity and July is our performance building.
Just a quick follow-up, Lou. You mentioned obviously the regulations you're dealing with this summer with COVID-19. When we search for positives on how to deal with these things, have you found that the 10 people in a weight room and the social distancing and being so far apart has allowed for maybe more one-on-one contact with you and your staff between one-on-one with a player and trying to get him optimized one-on-one more than you normally would during a June and July period?
Well, that's a great question. But the way we break up our workouts is it's one strength coach for every 9 to 12 guys at a time anyway. So even if our offensive unit is still in lifting and there's 40-ish guys in that unit, I have a strength coach that's responsible for every position group. So Coach Will is responsible for the O-lineman with the offensive group, and Coach Mike is responsible for the combo guys, and then Coach Steven is responsible for the receiver group, and then Coach Ferranto is responsible for the special needs, developmental kind of guys. So there's always that ratio, and when it comes to our format. But what we are missing right now in this 1 to 10 more so is just the overall team unity and the team enthusiasm. It's a quieter room right now. Guys are still working and putting in, all the effort that they need to put into. But once you've got that room filled and, you've got your teammates with you, supporting you and pushing you, and you hear everything else across the room on how hard other people are working, it really helps kick up that motivation in that room. So our guys always get that kind of supervision. That's just how we approach it, more so for safety as well as for the instruction and supervision. But we really like a filled up room when it comes to, working on the intensity, the effort when it comes to, our approach.
Jeremy, and then Lauren. Lou, thanks for doing this. Yeah, you said this is a challenge. I imagine there's got to be a lot that goes into this, but I imagine you embrace that challenge. But what are some of the more specific, hardest parts of this for you, or things you might have to sacrifice as a strength coach?
Yeah, I'll tell you, the thing about it is there's nothing to reference. I can't go back into any of my diaries or my notebooks or anything at all whatsoever to look back and say, wow, okay, I remember there was these adjustments, or we had this holiday, or so on and so forth. There is absolutely nothing to reference. So there is no research on how to come back after almost 4 months off, and I would never be the university that would want to volunteer for that study in the first place. So nobody's actually done that. So that's a really difficult challenge. We are really navigating in uncharted waters right now. And then when we're looking at our guys, we are trying to plug in our beginning part of our progressions that we would normally do for a group that's coming in after a break. But there are still a lot of guys right now that need even adjustments on top of that because of this significant amount of time that some guys have actually lost because of lockdowns or specific restrictions that they were in, and so on and so forth. So we've made a lot of, we know what we wanted to do in advance. And then once we're actually getting our hands on these guys, we're actually trying to make some adjustments on the fly when it comes to it, because there's just nothing to reference. We can't look back at anything and say, okay, let's follow, 1, 2, and 3 down the line, and we'll move on from there. Because that's what the Rose Bowl team did, and we want to make sure we're going to try to see if we can meet those standards. Well, this is brand new for us. So we still have goals, and we still have expectations, and we're still trying to meet certain things that are going to tell us where we are and where we'd like to be. But that's the biggest challenge of it right now, is to have that solid, quantified type of backing for us has been our biggest challenge.
And just to follow up, the NCAA has a 6-week program. I think kind of leads you guys into just training camp. What do you think of that? And I guess what would you expect this team to look like on September 4th compared to other teams in early September?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that we're going to do is we're going to train these guys hard. And there's still, our philosophy, I mean, there's pain and discomfort, and we're going to do that. And, we've been talking to our guys right now that they need to make sure that they're starting to move around. If we have to add additional days for some guys to continue to work on conditioning, then, we're going to do everything that we're going to need to do to give our guys the best chance to be as safe as they can when they get up on that football field. So, again, having this time that's going to be, mandatory from NCAA for 6 weeks, I think is about the only thing that I can really count on, that we're really excited about, is that our guys are going to have a structure that's going to get them to what we need to get them to, what we'd like for them to be. So what are we going to miss when we get into September is, again, I think we're going to miss a lot of, could the guys be at the ultimate best as where they are, if they had a full year of training with us under our belt? And that to me is that's really challenging for me. Now, are they going to be prepared? Yes, they're going to be prepared. But is Kendrick Green going to be at his ultimate best? Are we going to have a chance to get him to 725 on the squat this year? That's probably unlikely at this moment in time. So, as opposed to if we would have had a full year of training. So, I'm expecting our guys to be in shape, ready to play football once we get in September. I just, obviously with the time that we have missed, I think we're not going to be exactly where we would like to be with our ultimate goals as individuals, but as a team, we'll be ready to play.
Thanks, Phil.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lauren, Tate, and then Joey.
Lou, have you've talked a little bit about the problems of getting guys in shape? Are there some guys that jump out at you as appearing to be very near where they would have been? I mean, any names in particular that you say, boy, these guys are closer than you expected?
I'll tell you, I'm a couple of linebackers right now. When you got Jake Hansen and Kalen Tolson, I mean, these guys are leading the charge right now. Brandon Peters looks absolutely incredible at this moment in time. Luke Ford is showing some flashes of everything that we're expecting him to be. So these are some guys right now that have definitely put in some sweat and have put in some work, and you can definitely see that with this group. Blake Hayes is another guy who's definitely in great shape. Donnie Navarro's in incredible shape right now. So a lot of these guys that are here and with a lot of things to prove and to show, and it's really encouraging to see where these guys are right now, including
a lot of weight on Avery's shoulders, and we've talked about him before. If you're going to get him back in shape.
A lot of weight on Avery's shoulders, literally, figuratively. Yes, absolutely. I tell you, we are. He's a constant struggle. We've got, it's an issue that we've got to try to help him as a staff be able to manage what he does when he's outside of that room. I think like his strength coach, if you get an opportunity to grab something quick at a drive-through, that's usually how most of us try to survive on a daily basis. So, and he is doing an amazing job. I'm very proud that he's here to acknowledge the fact that he does need the extra work. So with that being said right now, I think we're definitely headed in the right direction for him to have been an early returner. And to definitely put the work and effort in right now to start moving in that direction. And he's already starting to show some of the improvements that we would like for him to see here within these last few weeks. So this area for him is his best support structure. And we're glad and proud to be that for him. And he's definitely moving in the right direction.
Thanks, Lou.
Yes, sir.
Joey, then Shannon.
Hey, Lou, with all these players coming back to you, obviously with access to different things for the last 3 months, how do you start that with the baseline for everybody and then adjust from there? Or do you put out a questionnaire to see where they have been? How did you approach that initial interaction with them again?
What we did actually this year is completely different. Was we started with just an old basic medical check run, which Janet Rayfield and the soccer team uses a lot of. It's just called a beep test, which has to do with a certain amount of run with your oxygen intake and your heart rate wearing monitors and a certain number with your VO2 max. So it's a very involved type of testing that we wanted to see and basically it can just give us an idea if a guy can pass a couch potato run, basically. And unfortunately, we've had a few guys who have struggled with that. So, they're going to continue to work with our medical staff until they can get into a better conditioning level. And once they're done from that checkoff, then we're going to go ahead and take them and start to work with them to get them where they need to be. So that has been very helpful for us right now to get an idea of where our guys are. And then we start off after that with general runs that we use at specific times of the year that tell us where our guys are and how we progress from there.
And then you mentioned the camaraderie in the weight room. Is there a way you can generate that just kind of in the absence of what you guys normally have? Can you, I don't want to say fake having that, but can you make that yourself for the time being?
No, we can't duplicate that. I mean, we do everything we can as a staff, to keep everything motivated. And I don't want my strength coaches to come out and try to pretend to be something that they're not. And, I want our guys to be driven internally, and that's what they have to do on a football field. Yes, it helps when you've got fans. This year we may not have fans. We have no idea. But I want those guys who are self-motivated and driven from within. And if they start to feel the lifts and everything else, then we definitely support all that. But our guys know that there's a standard when they step in that room, when they see that "get your mind right" sign. They know that they're going to have to flip a switch and start to pick up that intensity the minute they hit that room. If they don't match that their expectations, don't match my expectations, then we're going to do a few things to motivate them to make sure that they start to get their energy level up to an acceptable standard.
Shannon and Scott.
This might go into your the part you just talked about the motivation. When there might be guys who came back and they were surprised to see they're not in the same shape that they maybe expected after so much time off. Was that the case for some guys? And then how do you kind of handle maybe that initial realization of where a lower baseline maybe than what some of these guys have been in or what they thought they might be in?
Yeah, I'll tell you, and that's, what we'll normally do with guys that have issues with that is we start to put them in some extra sessions based on what it is that they might be missing. For example, if guys are not meeting a specific goal when it comes to a particular run, we're going to start to add a few more activities to help them get there. If their body fat on their DEXA readout, when they meet with our nutritionist, Laura, we have a lot of guys who are surprisingly, well, not necessarily surprisingly, but they're alarmingly, I guess, higher than they were expecting. So the thing about the DEXA is those numbers aren't going to lie to them. They're not going to lie to anybody when it comes to, yeah, coach, I was running, or yeah, coach, I was eating right, or yeah, coach, I was like, okay, well, we also got some tools that are going to help us get exactly where you are and compared to where you've been. And it takes an army of people. We've got our nutritionist that's going to help sit down with them. And now that she's taken all their body fats and show them the numbers. And so it's a real big eye opener for them when they sit there and look at these numbers. That it's been pretty surprising to them to see some of these increases as well too. So it's it's challenging for us, but it takes an army, and I think we've got a lot of people doing the right things.
Just one follow-up is after a layoff, from what I've read and heard other people say, there seems like there can be a prevalence for injury. And what do you have to ward against? You talked about the program, and it sounds like easing them back in is important, but are there certain things guys can be more prone to injury-wise that you have to look out for when they've had a significant time off or a time where they're not working out to the extent they had been?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the things, when it comes to excessive amount of work, when it comes to overdoing it, when it comes to rhabdo, when it comes to trying to work, and that has to do with doing too much too soon. And then when it comes to particular intensity levels, now you'll start looking at soft tissue issues when you're working too intense too soon. So all those things about, where we would have liked for them to have started compared to where some of them are actually starting right now is not necessarily the fault of the athlete, more so just the circumstances and the issues that we're working against when it came to guys being pulled away from here and not having an opportunity to work out. So yes, back in the day, you'd come into your first workouts and I was a part of it too. I mean, people were absolutely terrified about the first workouts of that week because it was just, you would drive them until they were crawling out of the facilities, Those days and times have changed, obviously scientifically, how things have improved from a knowledge standpoint. When it comes to preventing these issues and the actual development that's required to have them be able to sustain a season that's going to run us all the way into January, you have to be able to manipulate these progressions and these intensities. So, and then, being a coach is you want to have your plan, and you go into the game with your plan. And then as you get to the game, you might have to completely wipe that plan out and start to change and do some things based on what it is that you're actually seeing. And that's kind of where we're at right now. And it's given us a real good idea of what to expect when this next wave of guys comes in July.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Scott and Nico.
Hey, Lou, I guess I was just curious maybe with social distancing in a weight room, how you handle a case of spotting for a guy like Kendrick Green who's going to want to throw up 600 plus on a squat. I mean, can you still do stuff like that?
You know, I tell you what, I was in contact with our organization about this, because when we started hearing about the possibility of coming back into the room and maintaining social distancing and, you know, the guidelines for our organizations back where two wrongs aren't going to make a right, you know. So our concern was, you know, can somebody drop a bar? Absolutely. You know, you just don't want it to drop a bar over their face and have them go unconscious while it rolls down into their throat and there's nobody there to pick it up to keep it from suffocating. So we want somebody around and set and ready to go. So actually, the great thing about what we're doing right now is we've tailored a few of our lifts that guys don't necessarily need hands-on. But there's still a few of our basic lifts, like our bench and our squats, where we've got to have somebody at least in the vicinity. So is somebody actually right on top of the player? They're not at this moment in time, but they are within striking distance if anything appears like there could be an issue, because that was a very big concern for us when it came down to the overall safety of the athlete. Yes, we all understand the social distancing, but yes, so many things can go wrong in a weight room, even when you're doing things right, that we do want a spotter in position to help save a life versus, you know, versus having, you know, something that would be very tragic. So no question. It's something that we planned out, we discussed, and the best thing about where we are in June is Kendrick right now in his program is not going to come anywhere close to 700-pound squats here in June. That is actually going to progress for him as he gets further into July, is how we go about stepping up our plan. So fortunately, it's all working out, you know, where we'd like for it to be right now.
I mean, I guess, are there things you just can't do right now because of either restrictions because of the virus or restrictions because of just numbers in the weight room?
Nope, not at all. We're able to do whatever we need to get done in that weight room. And that's the thing about the approach with this on the discussions and everything else that we've had as a staff and everything, is that we are preparing right now to play football. And we're going to do everything that we're going to do to prepare our guys to be ready to play football. Nobody has told us that football in September is only going to start off with one quarter, and then we're going to eventually in a week later move to 2 quarters and then to 3 quarters. As far as we know right now, it's still football. So we want to train our guys to be able to do everything that they can do to be successful, to take care of themselves and do what they need to do on that football field. Now, from a spotting standpoint, yes, there are some things. So we do have to be a little creative with our when we're prescribing the exercises that we want to get done when it comes to how heavy and things such as that. So there's no question about the spotting aspect of it. But in the big picture, we are moving forward, full steam ahead with the mentality of football is football, and we're going to do everything we're going to do to make sure our guys get there on and meet the expectations that we'd like for them to meet.
Okay. Thanks, Lou.
Sure.
Nico and then John.
Hey, Lou, some of the guys that we've talked to have kind of talked about just kind of how weird the workouts are, small groups, not really being able to give high fives. You kind of touched on it earlier. Can you kind of see a correlation between kind of getting used to having to hype yourself up a little more to potentially playing games in front of, whether it be no fans, limited fans, kind of, you know, getting in that mindset for a potential odd feeling on game day?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, we're, you know, when it comes to the great thing about my position as a strength coach is I get to see these guys year round and almost every day. So our relationships, we see the best of what they can do and we see the worst of what they can do. And the fact that we see them every day, we build a relationship with these guys that's probably closer than with any other position coach. And that's just a matter of because we get to see them more than anybody else. So it is very difficult when these guys walk in and the first thing you want to do is run up to them, jump up and give them a hug. And instead, the best that we can maybe do is just give them that old elbow bump. And the coaches, myself and the coaches, we have to sit behind the face masks while we're actually coaching. So obviously, yes, the communication is different. Where we position ourselves around the athletes is different. We're normally right in it with them, feeling their sweat. It's dripping on us. And as far as that's how close we are to these guys on a normal day. So to help, encourage and push these guys to be the best they can be, this is challenging right now when your face is behind a mask and you got to stand a few feet away. Not that that's what we want to do, but that's what we have to do in order to keep everybody, safe. So yes, so that is different. I think the energy in the weight room, the more people that are in it, the stronger it gets. But the guys that are coming in, right now are doing a great job. I think they're just so excited to be back and have some sense of normalcy and to be back in their support system and to be back, getting themselves prepared with what we're all hoping is going to be, a season coming our way with that anticipation. So that excitement right now is driving this room and our players, and these guys, are excited to go.
And then follow up as well. What are you maybe looking for from some of the leaders right now when maybe, it is those smaller groups in there, some guys that maybe typically can lead by example, maybe can't do that as much. What are you kind of looking for from some of those leaders and older players?
Yeah, and a lot of them are. We're watching Jake Hansen right now. I don't think anybody can beat Jake on any of the runs in the groups that he's in right now. So he's definitely in his group, leading by example. I'm watching Jamal Woods, a defensive lineman who has struggled in the past with conditioning runs. He looks absolutely incredible right now in his runs. So Darian Lowe looks spectacular at this moment in time as an older guy. So and Alex Palczewski, these guys are doing just a great job, and it matters a lot to these guys to not only to be heard, but to also to be seen. They don't want to fail this late in their career in front of their teammates or hear that, okay, in Alex's group, Alex failed this run, and that trickles on down to the rest of the team, after that. So, they've got standards to uphold, and they're very proud of them, and they're doing, a really good job with these older guys stepping into this role, leading by example.
Thanks, Lou.
Sure.
John, then Gavin.
Hey, Coach, everybody knows you're going through some unprecedented times here, some crazy challenges. Overall, were you pleasantly surprised with how the guys come in, or were you realizing, oh man, I got a kind of a challenge here?
We've actually had a huge range, and you've had guys that could probably meet our top work capacity run from day one. And we've had some guys that are coming in that are going to need some extra work because of some of the medical check run that they weren't very successful at. So the biggest thing that I've told them all is that I know for you guys that have worked extremely hard during this time, we all have to get back on the same page. So if you got to take a few steps back, because we're trying to peak and get ready for August and September and October, not trying to peak for June and July and August. So they've got to scale back down and deload and unload at this particular moment in time, which also helps with the guys who are not able to be as active, and we can all pretty much start in square one. So we've had an enormous amount of range. when it comes down to it. But right now, we're all working on the same goal.
Hey, Lou. So normally right now, you've mentioned you're worried about injuries. You don't want to have guys come back and get injured. But, you kind of have a two-part thing to worry about now with guys getting the virus as well, possibly. I'm just curious, what do you view your role as in terms of advocating for players to, be as safe as they can so that, they don't have to sit out for weeks and lose the progress that they might have made?
You know what? That's a challenging one. That's probably the most challenging thing that we're dealing with right now, is for the guys to understand that nobody likes wearing the mask. Nobody likes social distancing. It's a close group of guys that, they share the majority of their time together in a locker room and in a weight room and meeting rooms, on the football field. And, when you're told, spread out, give yourself room. Hey, on your way out, make sure you have your mask and, spread out. I mean, no, that's not how we normally operate, So, and then having them continuously see us trying to follow the guidelines by wearing our masks and trying to communicate through these masks is hopefully letting these guys understand that, well, man, if these guys got to do it, well, then we got to do it too. So we're trying to set an example as well. Or if you got to take that mask off and stand over outside on the football field in the furthest corner to take a big, deeper breath, and catch your breath for a minute from that mask, well, then, everybody understands that. And once you get back around your people again, you follow the rules to do what you need to do from there. So it all starts with us making sure that we are trying to set the example for our players to see that however uncomfortable it might be, however cumbersome or anything else that it might be, that it's just what we have to do in order to prepare to play football in the fall.
Do you think guys are receiving that message well?
I tell you, I think there's a lot of guys that are understanding it. And I think a lot of guys also feel like, I think when you're 19 and 20 and you're a college football player, that you also think that you're immune to anything and everything. So, educating them and having them understand that this is real. And this is definitely not only something that can affect you, but it can affect your teammates when they might start having to go into quarantine as well. And then it might affect the coach who's not going to be able to help you through a weight room exercise. So just to try to do everything that you can do to just practice the fact that we don't want to be selfish, got to understand that this affects our entire team. Is what we're also trying to help educate as well.
Thanks, Lou.
Yeah, sure.
Carson, I think you're the last one.
Yep. Hey, Lou, how's it going?
Great, thank you.
Just wondering, how are you guys keeping track of the kids that couldn't come down to Champaign?
The guys that couldn't come down to Champaign, I tell you, the biggest thing that we're trying to talk to them about is just to make sure that they're doing something to stay active. We don't have a monitoring system, unfortunately. We don't have a tracking system. We looked into that back in April, and NCAA was not on board with that. So, when it comes to taking pictures, we can't have any of that access at all whatsoever. So we are really just, expecting our guys that if it's really going to matter to them to be successful, then we're going to find out once they get here, to see how much it really meant to them to take care of business. And, and we're hoping that our team has had a little bit of success last year. And the thing that we're expecting for them to know is 6 wins is just okay. 6 wins was, it's very average. I'm not an average. I don't consider myself an average strength coach. I know Coach Lovey doesn't think he's an average football coach. And we're hoping that these guys don't think that they're just average football players. We want to be above and beyond that. And we're hoping that the mentality and the success that we were able to instill in them early in the winter is carrying over to get us to where we'd like to be once they arrive here on campus. And of course, with the leadership of our older guys as well, with the Jakes and the Dougs and those guys, Blake, and to make sure they're communicating these things for these guys as well.
Joey, you got something else?
Yeah, Lou, you mentioned the test you took from Janet. I think you called it the couch potato test. Can you kind of walk me through what that looks like? What are the physical requirements of this test that these kids have to go through?
Okay, well, two things with that right now is she doesn't call it the couch potato test. I call it the couch potato test because basically what I understand with that, I mean, it's a very low intense run, but it does progressively get harder on a beep that is trying to shorten your rest time, and everybody has a specific amount of reps that they have to run back and forth within 21 meters, basically like a shuttle run in it. Once these beats start and stop, it kind of keeps a cadence going for them based on their VO2 max, based on their heart rate recovery. So it's a very solid test. And Janet has been using that for years, and we felt that this year we needed to do something different because of the amount of time that the guys, it's easy for me to say, hey, let's go run 10 100s, and I would probably do that if it were a normal time break that our guys would have had in the summer to return. And we start to eye our guys from that, looking at, can they make this? Are they on this pace? They're able to sustain this type of a workout. But unfortunately, that is just my coaching eye based on the experiences that I've had, based on something that's more quantified when it comes to an actual test that we were really excited to implement this year for all our guys to help us evaluate where they are and where we'd like for them to be.
Thanks, Lou.
Yeah, absolutely.
Matt Stevens, follow-up.
Lou, I wanted to ask you about Brandon Peters. You mentioned him earlier. I have always found Brandon to almost get personally offended when people don't mention his athleticism the same way they might mention the way he slings it with his right arm. And I was curious, how impressed you have been since he's gotten here last summer with his athleticism, and two, what are you seeing now that gives you the impression that he might be able to even, showcase that a little bit more in 2020?
I'm gonna tell you what, whatever it was that what motivated him, to continue to doing some work, I couldn't be happier with that, in this time off, because looking at him right now, his body looks incredible. He's definitely has maintained and maybe put on a little bit more lean muscle mass. He's got some more definition on him. He definitely looks like he's been in the weight room. Watching him run, he looks absolutely incredible. I mean, he's got his big, long stride, and he's taking people down with it, winning some races or some competitiveness. So he has definitely put some work in and to help showcase some of his athleticism. And, he's definitely standing out right now as a guy who continued to lift, continued to run, and continued to work on his overall performance. So, I think that right there, shows a lot to this football team, how important it is to our quarterback to get it done. And hopefully it's going to continue to spread throughout the remainder of our guys as well. So, absolutely.
Thanks for doing this, Lou. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for you guys. I
Still,
appreciate it. Thank you.
Jeremy
fella.
still got one more too.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sorry. I know you talked about, and I know you've talked about this before, how no one would be willing to do a study like this on how to ramp up a team so quickly. Are you really interested? Is there one part of that you're most interested? Because I'm sure you guys in the strength community have talked about what this will be like and how it could impact the long term.
Yeah, and you can help me with this, Jeremy, because I know that, I tell you what, when I was in the NFL in 2001, we had 100% participation. We still were following the old guidelines. Guys were working out, starting in January. They'd go home for a little bit. They'd be back in March, go home for a little bit. They'd be back for the summer. So the guys were spending, 6 weeks, 7 week sessions with us at the facilities back in 2001. And then here recently, and you probably know this date better than I, when they changed those workouts for them, when guys just appeared to start showing up, I think they missed a significant amount of training time in the winter, leading into the summer. And next thing you know, going into the season, there appeared to be an enormous amount of Achilles ruptures and soft tissue issues. That now, is the training the answer, or the lack of, or the change in how they approached it? I don't know if that is or not, but all I can tell you is that there definitely was a change. So that is very concerning to me, that moving into this type of time off, is the amount of time that we're going to work with our guys going to be enough? And to be honest with you, I'd like to tell you, I think we're going to have our guys in a good position, but there's nothing right now that actually says, yes, you're right on point based on the histories of workouts. And so it's going to be really interesting once we get there, to find out exactly how all this works out.